70 laps of the Hungaroring are complete, and we have a spinner and a winner as Max Verstappen takes his 8th victory of the 2022 season, having started this afternoon's Grand Prix from P10 on the grid. A remarkable drive from our leader in the championship this afternoon. Hello and welcome to your F1 Live post-race show with me, Rosanna Tennant, and Haas reserve driver Pietro Fittipaldi. We're sheltering from the rain, Pietro, because the rain did come. It just came perhaps a little too late to really spice things up.
I know, because we were having a great race and we were, at least for Haas, hoping a little bit of rain in the end to see if, something interesting could happen, and it came just after the checkered flag.
It was raining a little bit throughout. We heard quite a few drivers talking about it. We saw quite a lot of it on our cameras as well throughout the race, but it just wasn't enough to really, as I'm actually watching some intermediates being wheeled away by the Pirelli representatives, it wasn't enough to warrant a switch to the treaded tyres.
Yeah, because during the race, I'm in the engineering truck, and I was looking at the other trucks and the roof of them and how much it was drizzling, but it just wasn't enough. It was just a little bit, but not enough to make a difference in the race, to lose that grip. But I mean, in the race, we saw a lot of differences in tire performance from the soft to the medium to the hard tire. So that already was kind of a spicy things for the strategy.
And I think even some of the drivers who were on that soft tire at the end, if the rain had got a little heavier, I think they would have been okay probably to make it to the end on the soft tire. Well, coming up on the show, we're going to take a look at the strategic masterclass that Red Bull pulled off this afternoon, and then conversely, some of the blunders that Ferrari made this afternoon, especially with Charles Leclerc. Then we're going to take a look at the Mercedes resurgence. 2 drivers on the podium again, backing their performance up from last weekend in France with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finishing on the podium this afternoon. And then we're going to take a closer look at McLaren's pace this afternoon. Lando Norris with a great drive, and Daniel Ricciardo managing to clear both Alpines, unfortunately taking that penalty at the end of the race though. But we're going to take a look at how that battle for P4 in the constructors' standings is shaping up. So lots to unpack, of course. If you're watching and you want to comment or send in a question, always use that hashtag F1 Live, and I can put a question to Pietro or to any of our guests, because I'm sure they'll be queuing up to help us unpack that race. It was such a complex, strategic race. It was difficult, I think, to keep up with who was where, who was net leader, who was race leader on track, because there were so many different ways to have got yourself to the checkered flag this afternoon.
Yeah, and because it's a short track as well, at a certain point there were lapped cars that were only lapped because they had an extra pit stop, so it was hard to really understand how especially the mid-pack was going to unravel. But we saw a lot of cars as well, especially for us, like the hard tire didn't really work for us, and that, was a big hit for our strategy. And some teams were able to make the hard tire work, and then some teams weren't. And it was the same with the soft tire. Some teams, after 10 laps having massive deg on the soft tire, and some able to stay consistent and run it for a lot longer. So big mix in strategy and performances from team to team.
Lando Norris had a punchy start, but then was wise to let Max and Lewis through, and I think not fight too hard and perhaps save himself for later on in the race, and of course finishing P7 for McLaren this afternoon.
Yeah, and then, when you're in those situations where you got, 2 cars that are much faster, different cars that are a lot more competitive, then sometimes for your own overall race, it's better to let them by than to defend and lose time at the end, because they're going to get past you somehow. So, yeah, I think it was definitely wise to let them go and, secure a top 7 finish. Well,
someone who didn't let drivers go was Daniel Ricciardo, and we'll be hearing from Lando Norris a little later on in the show. But Daniel Ricciardo making a great move on both Alpines. I think the Alpines were getting a bit too kind of concerned with each other, and then Daniel just taking them both in his stride.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think the Alpine were fighting against each other quite a lot. They were being quite aggressive, and then at the end, I think, Daniel was able to make the most out of it. But, just watching, I like teammates fighting. I think it's part of the game. Each guy's racing, for themselves, and it makes things more exciting.
We had quite a few teammates following each other around the track today. We had the Alpines, we had the McLarens. Probably could have been closer if Daniel didn't have that penalty with the Aston Martins, and of course at the very end of the race we had the Mercedes too. Well, let's hear from Daniel Ricciardo now, who's been talking in the media pen.
Hey Daniel, it looked like a really difficult day out there. Just talk me through how hard the car was, especially on the hard tyre. It looked pretty horrible.
Yeah, the hard was horrible. I think the soft as well at the start fell away really quickly. So I think the only tyre we had I mean, we were able to kind of do a little bit on was the medium in the middle of the race. But then, yeah, coming out on the hard was like ice. So obviously I had the contacts with Lance as well. So yeah, it's one of those ones I tried obviously to do what I could to not hit him. It just locked so early. So obviously apologise to him for that. But yeah, we were just slow. And then with you get blue flags and you just never get temperature as well on a tyre. So yeah, not much to say.
Looking forward to the summer break and just some time to decompress a little bit?
Absolutely.
Good to get away for a bit, I guess, is it?
Yeah.
Just to take away from a racetrack.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you.
Well, a tricky day for Daniel Ricciardo, picking up a penalty as well for his contact with Lance Stroll. And Lance Stroll was in the wars as well, contact with Alex Albon at the beginning of the race as well. We said we'd hear from Lando Norris. I think we can hear from him now, talking in the media pen with Lawrence Barretto. Oh, in fact, we're going to hold and wait to hear from Lando a little later on. He's playing with us, just teasing us, yeah. That battle for P4 in the constructors' standings, though, that's going to be one to watch because they seem so level at points and then one or other of them seems to pull away.
Yeah, and it depends on the track as well because some teams, definitely some tracks suit their car better. So it's really about maximizing. When you have a track that you're able to really maximize, that's when we got to get a lot of points. So for Haas, for example, at Paul Ricard, we're actually really fast, and especially in qualifying. But then Kevin had that power unit change, so he had to start from the back, and then we couldn't get those points there, then couldn't get points again over here. So it's really, when the car is strong, you have to maximize and get as many points as possible. And yeah, the battle, I mean, it's not only tied in the P4 and the constructors, but even from 5th, 6th, 7th, all the way down, it's just, it's going to be a tough field.
Yeah, it's all to play for the back end of the season. Well, I promised you, Lando Norris, I whetted your appetite. Now we can hear from Lando Norris, who finished P7 this afternoon.
Hey, Lando, I know you thought it might be tricky to keep some cars behind, but I thought you had a really good performance today.
We did against the people we're racing, really. So, yeah, I mean, just if you think of P4 as a grid position, then you expect a little bit more on Sunday. And to end 62 seconds behind just the next car ahead of me. Yeah, it's a big challenge to do anything more from that. And so therefore our race was against Alpine, the cars behind me, and we did a good job with them, managing the tyres, managing especially the first stint. I think I destroyed my front left tyre after like 6 laps, and I was very worried because we aimed for like a lap 20 or 25 or something, so it didn't really go to plan at all. But then our pace on the medium tyre, and I think our pace when there weren't any issues with tyres and management was strong, and stronger than Alpine today, which is good news and a good sign. But yeah, we just seem to destroy the tyres a lot quicker than everyone else, so that's the only thing we have to really work on. But the middle stint was strong, and then the final stint was easy. I was just on my own and just yeah, hoping for the race to end. So yeah, challenging, but we did everything we could, and P7 I have to be happy with.
On a personal level, looking back at the first half of the year, you pretty happy with how things have gone?
I am. I mean, for myself and my driving and so on, I'm happy. You know, I think still like some good highlights. Still, I don't know how I got a podium in Imola. Like, it just blows my mind. I don't know. With a car that we have, that's quite some achievement. So, still makes me smile now. But there's still a lot of positives. I guess we just know we have a lot of hard work to do. The gap to the guys ahead is still massive, and I guess, yes, it's close on Saturday, but everyone's closer on Saturday. Even last place is a lot closer. It's just the spread then onto Sunday is bigger than what it has been in the past, and we got to work on that. So we will. I mean, I'll enjoy my break first, then we'll work on it and see what we can do for next time. But yeah, I think a reasonable start to the season. So I'm happy with it.
Great stuff. Have fun.
Mixed messaging from Lando Norris, finishing P7, a bit of a lonely race, so difficult then to really enjoy it, I think, when you're in a bit of a vacuum. And as you can see, it stopped raining. We've discarded our umbrellas. Yeah,
exactly. It's always like that here in Hungary. It's kind of, you get some random showers, it stops, always mixes things. It was like that in the F2 race earlier today also. But yeah, pretty solid finish for Lando. And yeah, exciting race.
And that battle with Alpine continuing. They finished P8 and P9. Fernando just ahead of Esteban Ocon. It was a difficult day for them, and I don't think, well, both in the points. So I think all things considered, good. But I think they struggled a little bit on that hard tyre, didn't they? The car didn't like that.
Yeah, and I think the teams that didn't opt for the hard tire after the first stop, they were able to notice that the hard tire wasn't really working very well. And then they went for another strategy because, for example, with us at least, we stopped, went on the hard tire, and the pace was just, it was so difficult to get any temperatures in the tire and make it work and be able to be, have any pace on those hard tires. And a lot of teams struggled with that. So the medium tire was definitely the better one. The second best tire was the soft, and the hard one was the one you wanted to avoid at all costs.
But it was still tempting to try it. So it's interesting that teams still wanted to give it a go, because I spoke to Mario Sola from Pirelli as we headed towards the start of the Grand Prix, and he said, the hard tire is going to be difficult with these colder temperatures. But I guess they were just hoping that perhaps a safety car would come out and that would help them sort of eke it out and get themselves to the checkered flag.
Yeah, some teams were able to kind of make it work, and then they went really long. I think Alpine, with Alonso, maybe did like 30-something laps on the hard tire. And if you were able to make it work, you have to go as long as possible, and then maybe at the end stop and put on softs. But if you can't make it work, you can't get the temperature in the tire, then it's like driving around on ice. So, and that's really setup dependent. So if you have a really stiff car, you're able to put energy into the tire, you're able to create that temperature in the tire, then you can switch it on. But if you can't, then you're just sliding around, and it's not good.
Yeah, not good at all. Well, let's hear from Fernando Alonso. P8 for him on the road today. This is his reaction to his Hungarian Grand Prix.
Fernando, it looked like a tricky afternoon out there. Some frustrations, kind of feeling trapped behind your teammate. Just talk me through it.
Yeah, well, no frustration. I mean, I was just following whatever instruction the team was giving to me, and fall a little bit behind and try to breathe with the tires. We wanted to make one stop work, so we wanted to save the tires a little bit, and yeah, at the end we managed. All in all, I think the result, especially compared to McLaren, that we equal points, I think it was a good afternoon. But obviously we started 5th and 6th, and we were having some expectations to have a nice result today. But yeah, we were not quick enough during the race. I think the hard tire, we're struggling to switch on the tire as well. So yeah, it was a tricky balance today in the car.
The consistency seemed to have improved of late, like in terms of results, and the upgrades are working and stuff. Does that bode well for the second half of the year, and what do you need to do to make that step up, really?
Yeah, I think it was quite a good month for us. The last 4 races we introduced a lot of new parts in the car. They all made us a little bit more competitive, and I think we just need to keep scoring points with both cars, like today, and hopefully that's our strength compared to McLaren for the constructors.
Okay, thanks.
Double points finish then for Alpine. Not as many as perhaps they would have wanted coming into this afternoon's race, but at least they take some momentum into the summer break, and hopefully they can build on that in Spa and onwards through the rest of the season. Let's move our attention now, Pietro, to Red Bull, because we found out this morning that both cars, Checo Perez and Max Verstappen, would be taking new power unit components with no penalty for doing so, because they're still within their allocation. And it seems to have paid off, a good choice, and it's managed to get Max Verstappen right up to the top spot, taking that win. And Sergio Perez, P5, having started just outside the top 10 this afternoon, P11.
Yeah, I think it was definitely Red Bull were able to maximize what they had. I think Sergio at the end was almost very close to getting into the top 4, maybe a podium. But he couldn't quite do it, but a very good recovery by Red Bull, and really just executing on all ends, I think, today.
Yeah, it was fabulous, and what a majestic drive from Max Verstappen. Let's hear from his team principal, Christian Horner. He's been talking with Laura Winter in the paddock.
Well, Christian Horner, congratulations, a victory for Max Verstappen. And before the race, you said to me, let's just see, shall we? Did you ever expect that that's what would happen?
No, I thought, you know what, if we can get somewhere near the podium today, that would be damage limitation. And I think that to think that we could win from P10, at this track that's notoriously hard to overtake, with a bit of a clutch issue in the first half of the race. So
and a spin.
And a spin. So despite all of that, Max just delivered a phenomenal drive today, and the car was quick. It did what it needed. It was very kind on its tires today, and Checo not being far off a podium as well from starting P11. So the perfect way to sign off the summer, for the summer break.
I heard Max saying that it was all about being patient and just being calm, and you saying to him that was one of his best drives ever on the race radio.
I think it was one of his best. He keeps raising the bar, and I'm just absolutely delighted with the way that he's driven the first half of this year, and to go into the summer break with a healthy points lead. is well deserved. And the team, the pit stops, the way they've worked from being in not great shape on Friday to winning the Grand Prix today from 10th on the grid is a phenomenal achievement.
And a word on Ferrari as well. Much has been said about their strategy today and putting Charles Leclerc on that hard tyre, which simply was not working. I mean, again, we didn't see the battle that perhaps we were expecting between the Ferraris and the Red Bulls in terms of pace.
No, the hard tyre definitely wasn't great today, and you could see in this cold temperature, originally we were going to start the race on the hard, but we switched it because we just looked at the temperatures and thought, you know what, we were struggling to get tyre temperature in the car on the way to the grid, let alone put our hard tyre on, and that was on the soft tyre. So we switched our plan last minute, and it worked out well.
It did work out well for you indeed. Finally, we're heading into the summer break. You're going out on a massive, massive high. How will you spend the next few weeks ahead of Belgium?
With the family, with the kids, with my wife, and it's flat out until next Friday, but then a bit of downtime that's well deserved for everybody before they fully recharge and come back for the triple header, straight after the summer break. So, looking forward to that.
There's still a championship to be won, but you're in a great position. Thanks so much, Christian. Well done today.
Thank you.
A very upbeat Christian Horner. What a way to sign off for the summer break. It doesn't feel very summery, Pietro. It feels quite wintry, actually.
I was actually speaking to a guy here, and he says, I think it's the coldest summer day we've had this year.
And then, by contrast, on Friday, we were both saying how hot we were. It was unbelievable here on Friday. It's like we've changed country over the weekend. It's just been a bizarre weekend, a great weekend. It's really kind of made it for all of us to enjoy a better race weekend, really. I want to talk about Sergio Perez first. We will touch, of course, on our race winner, Max Verstappen, a little later on in the show, and we'll be looking at some tyre analysis too with Sam Collins. But Sergio Perez was really uncomfortable in the car earlier on in this weekend, starting outside the top 10 to finish P5. It's been really difficult. The car seems to have changed a bit for him over the last few races. Can just a bit of time away from it help sometimes when you get too in your head about things? Would a bit of time away now help?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps, kind of go back home, re-energize a bit, come back to Spa with, kind of more energy into it. He's doing a great job. I mean, for sure in the beginning of the year, it seemed like he was a bit more competitive in the Red Bull car. But if you look at the point standings, he's still very close to being in, I don't know if he's third or fourth now, but I just took a look before coming in. He was very close into being either third or fourth there. So he's doing a stellar job still. For sure the summer break is going to help. I think top 5 finish is still, a good positive result to go into the summer break and come back stronger at Spa.
Just seems like the car is suiting Max Verstappen a little bit more, and of course Max managing to extract the maximum out of it. Well, we will hear from Max a little bit later on, but first let's hear from Checo Perez, and he's been talking in the media pen just behind us.
Hey, Checo, good fight back to start with. It looked like you were having a fun race, and were you just a bit disappointed that the pace kind of wasn't there towards the end?
Yeah, I think in the middle of the race we were looking good. We were thinking to go for the one stop, so therefore I think we didn't quite maximize that stint, and unfortunately, that didn't work out as good as we would liked. And then at the end, I mean, I just lost out by a couple of seconds on Carlos and George. We were much faster together with Charles from behind, but unfortunately there was virtual safety car for a bit too long, and that did hurt us a bit.
Now, when you look back on this first half of the year, how are you feeling heading into the summer break?
A bit up and down, a couple of reliability issues, but other than that, I think there are some positives to take from this first part of the season, but I certainly believe that we've lost a bit our track in the last couple of races, so it will be very important to come back very strong for the triple header.
Thanks, have a good break.
Thank you.
We've just taken a look at the standings because it takes a while to update them. Pietro, you had a quick look, and you can reveal that Checo is?
He's third, 5 points from second, so it's still pretty good, Imagine Red Bull being, in first with Max, and if Checo after the summer break can come back and, maybe even finish second in the championship, I think Red Bull have to be very happy with that. And for sure, after the summer break, he'll be back in the window. I think the qualifying performance is what kind of been struggling a little bit for Checo recently, but he's always been a racer, so he always recovers massively in the race. But I'm sure now he'll be back at it at Spa. good again in qualifying.
You're like his biggest fan. I love it.
Yeah, he's a good
bigging
friend.
him up. Well, yes, exactly. Today's result helping Checo gain some points in the standings. And, of course, chasing down in the standings, Charles Leclerc. What an afternoon. I think everybody was probably, whether Ferrari fan or not, screaming at the telly earlier on, saying no. Like, we had a slow pit stop for Carlos Sainz. We had the hard tyre going on for Charles. Frustration all round again.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's even hard for me to comment. I don't know what happened there, but they had so much pace, and I don't know what to say, to be honest.
I guess they had to try something different. We spoke about the hard tyre earlier on. I think most people knew it wasn't going to be the tyre to be on, but maybe they felt that they just had to experiment this afternoon.
I think the problem was, I don't know if they started on soft or medium, but the starting tyre that they were on, I think they started maybe on medium, and it prohibited them from going...
Now I'm going to check for you.
Yeah, I think it prohibited them from going to medium again after the first stop. Then they had to go on hard and had to go long because they couldn't...
started on the medium.
Yes, and then they had to go to hard after that. They couldn't go to soft because soft wasn't going to make it at the end for the whole race. So from medium, they went to hard. The hard didn't work. Then they got passed by everybody. And then at the end, they stopped again for the soft and tried something with that, but it was just unfortunate.
Yeah, he was a sitting duck out there, wasn't he? With all the cars that he was trying to put up a fight with, it was just impossible with those tyres, and it is so cold here. I can't begin to tell you. Totally got the wardrobe choice wrong. That's what happens when you pack before you fly to France. So yes, it was a poor choice because it was cold, because it was difficult to get the heat into it. And do we think they could have thrown away a win today, or do you think it was more of just a podium for Charles that they threw away?
No, for sure. I think they could have won the race. I think if they would have redone the race again, maybe it's hard. It's so easy to say after everything's happened, but maybe starting on soft could have been a better option, knowing that the hard wasn't going to work. Go to soft, then maybe do double stop again with 2 stops after, but on mediums, and avoid the hard tire completely. But like I said, some teams made the hard tire work. Unfortunately, I think for Ferrari, it didn't quite work with the hard tire.
Yeah, really disappointing day for Charles and all the drivers and teams wanting to have some form of momentum to carry through into the second half of the season. Charles Leclerc was definitely one of those, especially after that mistake at Le Castellet last weekend. Let's hear from him now. He's been talking to Lawrence Barretto.
Charles, considering what the pace of the car looked like in that early stages, just sum up your emotions right now, because it kind of just went downhill from first stops.
I'm very, very disappointed, obviously. The pace was really good on the medium tyres. Second stint also, everything was under control, and then we decided to stop on the hard, which I don't exactly know what are the reasons behind these decisions yet, but we'll speak with the team for me to understand, but clearly it was under the right decision, and I made it clear that I felt good on the medium, so I don't exactly know what happened.
It's obviously been a difficult few races, bar that win that came at the right time. When you go into the summer break, how are you feeling? Is it important for you to just get a bit of a break?
Yes, but on the other hand, I feel very motivated, and I just want to get back in the car and win again. So today hasn't been good. The last Sunday hasn't been good, but overall the pace is there. We just need to get better at putting everything together, because it always felt like there's something going wrong, and we need to get on top of this.
How are you going to do that? How do you do that?
By speaking with the team, obviously, and first understand our mistakes and then get better.
Thanks.
I think we'd all like to be a fly on the wall in the Ferrari engineering debrief this evening, and I think we'll all hope that they can come back fighting for the second half of the season so we can see them really take the fight to Red Bull. That's what we want to see. We want to see all the cars battling out on track and not making any strategic errors, shall we say, too often. Well, let's head back to F1's HQ now with Sam Collins, our tech analyst, who's been looking at the tyres chosen by the teams up and down the grid. Sam, we've spoken about Ferrari perhaps making a big mistake, putting Charles onto the hard tyres. Anybody else's strategy standing out to you this afternoon?
The strategy this race was absolutely fascinating, but it all really started before the race had even got underway. There was a threat of rain, but it didn't really materialise until the post-race show started. But there's a wonderful moment at the start of every single Grand Prix, and it's when the tyre blankets are on every single car at the front of the grid. Red Bull take a look at Ferrari, Ferrari take a look at Red Bull, and they're all trying to catch a glimpse of who's on what tyre, who's decided to do what on strategy. We already heard from Christian Horner that they were saying they thought about starting the race on hard tyres. whether that would work, but they decided to change their minds on the grid. Well, Charles Leclerc was thinking about starting the race in a different way as well, but Ferrari decided to start the race on mediums, and that turned out to be a bit of a mistake. When those tyre blankets came off and they saw a Mercedes on soft tyres, they saw McLarens on soft tyres, and of course they saw the Red Bulls on soft tyres, I wonder if it had started to dawn on Ferrari that they'd done something wrong. Now, when you take a look here at the pit strategy, around lap 16, it was clear that the soft tyres were reaching the end of their life. You could see this all the way through the field. The cars were just beginning to slow down, the tyres were going off, they were struggling on the softs. But Ferrari didn't really have much of an option here because they didn't start on the soft, they would have to use a different compound of tyre during the race. Now, the second stint, it was very clear that you had to go for a medium tyre, and it's exactly what Ferrari did in the second stint. But then what would they do towards the end of the race? They would have to take either a soft tyre or a hard tyre if it didn't rain, and of course it didn't. So you look at what Charles Leclerc did. He's down here in 6th position. Ferrari came in and bolted on a set of hard tyres. That was clearly the strategy that I think they set out to do at the start of the Grand Prix. But it was clear immediately that there was no temperature in those hard tyres. The temperatures had dropped down at the track, they couldn't get the heat into them. Those hard tyres were like driving on ice. And it's not like Ferrari didn't have a warning, because if they'd looked earlier, further down the grid, the Alpines, who were going for a one-stop strategy, had decided to go for that hard tyre, and they struggled to get heat into that tyre as well. That was a problem. But as Charles Leclerc was going through the hard stint and struggling with those tyres, Ferrari realised that they were in trouble. At that point, the race was lost, regardless of what else happened. Other drivers and teams saw what had happened to Leclerc and reacted. Mercedes, with Lewis Hamilton, who ended up finishing second, he did a 32-lap stint on the medium tyres in the middle of the race. That saw him rise up through the field and allowed him to go for 19 laps on the soft tyre at the end of the Grand Prix. Similar situation, Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari. They realised the error of Leclerc and decided to correct it. But look how short Charles Leclerc's middle stint was on those medium tyres. Just 18 laps. He clearly could have gone deeper into the race, perhaps as much as Carlos Sainz did, or even further into it, taken on those soft tyres, and he could have been a factor at the end of the Grand Prix. But the driver who really impressed me was Max Verstappen. Even with that spin earlier in the race, he just managed to get the soft, medium strategy working, and 32 laps on the medium tyres showed their potential. However, there were some other strategies on display. The Alpine team clearly made a decision at the start of the race to go for a one-stop strategy. They came in around lap 21, bolted on a set of hards, and got on with it. It didn't really work out. They didn't rise up through the grid particularly far, but it worked out and they got some points. The other teams I just want to draw your attention to are right down here at the bottom of the grid. Williams playing around with a three-stop strategy. Didn't really gain them anything, didn't really work, didn't really defend well against Yuki Tsunoda. And then just at the end of the race, we didn't really see it in the coverage, Kevin Magnussen bolted on a set of soft tyres for a 2-lap run. Was he going after the fastest lap? If he was, it didn't really work. So tyre strategy was what this race was all about, despite the brilliant on-track action, Rosanna.
Oh, Sam, thank you for talking us through it. There was so much to keep abreast of during those 70 laps of the Hungaroring. And Pietro, I'd love to talk now about Carlos Sainz's race, because it was a bit of a tricky one for him. He was caught napping somewhat at the virtual safety car restart when George managed to get the jump on him, or rather sort of get going faster than him, and pulled that gap to sort of 4 seconds straight away.
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure what tires there were at the end, but if you were on the harder compound, for example, even the medium or the hard, after the virtual safety car, because it's a bit cooler today, the tire temps drop, and then when you restart again, you lose so much
That was at
pace.
the end, because we had 2 VSCs, didn't we? The very first one, at the very first of the race. So George was in the lead at that point. He's probably like thinking back on that lovely moment, leading the race, potentially winning the race at that point, but managed to pull that advantage from Carlos to 4 seconds. Of course, Carlos then managed to reel him in, but I think caught napping a little bit there. Then Ferrari had the slow pit stop as well, so it wasn't a great day for Carlos Sainz. Finished P4, but he's been been jumped in the standings by George Russell. George was just a point behind, and now he's ahead in the standings.
And Mercedes are just like every weekend. I think Hamilton's been on the podium in the past 4 or 5 race weekends. George with the pole yesterday, a P3 today finish, and I think Mercedes are just hitting their marks, and the car consistently keeps getting better. I mean, they look kind of spicy today.
Something's
when
happening.
George was defending and he was in the lead. He was able to hold off Leclerc and Sainz for a while, and I think, yeah, they're just really hitting their marks. Just need the car a little bit better, and they're going to be up there in the fight every weekend.
Well, someone from the team, and I'm naming no names, did tell me that they thought they'd be winning in Spa, so slow and steady wins the race.
Who said that?
Ooh, it's a secret. It's a secret. Well, let's hear from Carlos Sainz, then, finishing P4 today, but losing a place in the driver's standings. Here's Carlos.
Hey, Carlos, great pace for much of that race, but it seemed those 2 pit stops really didn't make your life very easy, did they?
No, today we had a bit of bad luck there in the pit stops because we definitely had a couple of slow ones. Particularly the first one was costly because I think we would have just got George with an overcut, which would have put me leader of the race at the time, which was a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's how it goes. Today, honestly, the pace wasn't great either. I think I was struggling a lot with the front tires. The balance was nothing close to where it was on Friday. I couldn't push on the tires, and in the end, 70 laps, I think we ended up more or less where we deserved to be because we just didn't have the pace we had on Friday.
Were you surprised? I know it was a more difficult day yesterday versus Friday, but were you surprised at how difficult the tyres were today?
Yes, clearly these temperatures, these conditions didn't go in our favor because we went from clearly dominating Friday on pace and on everything, on degradation. We had barely any deg, to all of a sudden struggling a lot with the front tires and not being able to push, opening up the fronts. You just need to compare the last stint on soft, Lewis versus me. No, it was a pretty big pace delta, which this pace delta was in our favor on Friday.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Carlos Sainz now P5 in the driver's standings. Well, let's hear from his team boss, Mattia Binotto. Another difficult day in the office for the Ferrari team. He's been talking to Laura Winter in the paddock.
Well, Mattia, you came here wanting a P1 and a P2. It was P2, P3 on the grid, and you've come out with a P4 and a P6. I know so much of the conversation now will be about tyres, and certainly the decision as well for the hard tyres when it looks like it wasn't working. Talk to me about the reasoning behind it, the explanation of why you put Charles Leclerc on that hard tyre and how much understanding you have of it at the moment.
I know that as far as we are certainly frustrated because we are hoping for a better result. More than that, I think we are frustrated because the car was not working as we were hoping so today. And yes, we may start discussing strategy, but I think the strategy is a consequence of the fact that the car was not working well, and then the tires not working as they should be, and finally the strategy. So we stopped for the hard tires because 30 laps to the end, we were protecting position on Max. We knew that with the hard we would have had some warm-up issue a couple of laps, then they would have been soared to the medium for 10-11 laps, but then it was still a long stint and they could have come back. But overall they didn't work. The reason of, I think, is again to be looked into why the cars today was not working as we were hoping for. If we look at Carlos' race, same strategy of Lewis that finished second, but we finished behind. So overall I think we didn't have the speed today. And I think is where we need to put our focus to understand why. As I said, if I look at the entire season so far, it's the first time it's not really working, and there should be a good reason for it.
Especially at the track that, I mean, everyone said really suited Ferrari, so there's no understanding from your side of the garage at the moment as to why the car simply didn't have the pace today.
Yeah, it's suiting to Ferrari, but we know as well it's always very tight and very close, and suiting means maybe 1/10 on one side or 1/10 on the other. But overall today, the speed was and the pace was not great. The drivers were suffering as well. Driving on balance and setup. So I think we need really to look the data. I don't think there is much we can do. As I said, find out the reason and move forward from that.
And while, of course, you guys suffered with the pace and suffered with the tyres, Red Bull managed to come from P10 with Max Verstappen to P1. I mean, is this championship over now?
I don't know, the championship is over. He did a fantastic race today. I think starting from 10th, finishing first. It's obviously well done to them. I think it's still a long way to go. We need to focus on ourselves, try to improve, because certainly there are weaknesses that need to be improved. And let's see, step by step, race per race, as we did in the first half. We try to focus on ourselves. There is as well the Constructors' Championship, where I think is not over at all, and there is much to come.
All right, great stuff. Thank you very much, Mattia.
Welcome.
Enjoy your summer break.
I find it interesting, Mattia Binotto saying that they need to focus on themselves at Ferrari, and I have to say that is where Mercedes has been so strong. They have just focused on themselves, turned up, got the job done, perhaps with a slower car than others, but as you were saying earlier on in the show, they have been there when it matters, like today with a P2 and a P3 again.
Yeah, they just seem to be picking up on other people's mistakes, I think, because they're not making any mistakes, and they're just executing, and at the end they might not have the fastest car, but they're still able to finish with both cars on the podium because they're just hitting their marks.
And I loved how Toto Wolff said yesterday, he's like, I don't know really what we did, but we need to go back and go over everything we did yesterday, to the point of even what we ate and we drank to achieve the result they got yesterday with George Russell. So I think it's an exciting time, I think, for the F1 paddock to see them back in the fight, because that's what I think the general fan base want to see. They want to see all six, the two drivers from Ferrari, from Red Bull and from Mercedes, all fighting together.
Yeah, for sure. And could you imagine the battle with Mercedes? Because I think both Hamilton and Russell have been kind of, either one guy's ahead at one race and then the other guy's ahead. Imagine both of them being able to fight for the championship. And then you add again Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Perez. That would just be unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Stay tuned for part 2 of the 2022 season with Pietro Fittipaldi. Well, let's hear from Toto Wolff. I'm sure he's in good spirits after today's result of P2 and P3.
Well, Toto, congratulations. I know you've got to run to catch a plane. I'm going to be very quick. A double podium once again for Mercedes. Just sum it up for us.
Yeah, it's great. You always want to have more, and I think second and third on the road really fought it out, and we had the car with a good pace today. George drove a fantastic race, and Lewis came from nowhere. And Lewis in Budapest, it's a success story. I think he probably could have won the race.
Absolutely. I'll let you go because your team are haranguing me to let you leave. Safe flight home. Have a good summer break.
Thank you, Laura Winter. Talking to Toto Wolff. I think he will enjoy his summer break, as Laura sort of wished him well, sent him off on his holidays. A great result for them. I think I would have really liked to have seen George and Lewis, and you were talking about the battle between teammates. I would have liked to have seen them on the same tyre this afternoon, battling to get a read on who's where. Of course, we had George Russell finishing the race on the medium and Lewis on that soft, having stayed out longer. But are you anticipating things to get a little spicy between these two in their first year as teammates?
No, I think I'm not inside the team to see, but I think they have a great relationship, and I think, I think Lewis is a great guy as well, and he understands they're both working towards the same goal and trying to get Mercedes and their car back to where it should be, winning races, and I don't think this season, who knows, next season, if the car's back there and then they're both fighting for the championship, maybe they turn into rivals. But I think from looking at it at the outside, I think they have a great, relationship as teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. Both pushing the car in the right direction to try and get that performance out there. I think George was honest on the radio at the end to his engineer, Ricky, saying actually that last stint was really difficult. He was on the medium, and that was obviously proving quite tricky. I think you wanted to really be on the soft at the end there. We've already spoken about how difficult the hard was. I think the medium probably didn't suit them too well, and maybe that soft was what he'd really want at the end.
Yeah, and it's so dependent from driver to driver and car to car, because like for us, the medium was the best tire there was the whole race. We always wanted to be on the medium tire, and for some teams it was the soft, and for some teams even the hard worked. So I think it was just really dependent on even driving style as well, because sometimes you're just outside of getting the tires into the temperature window. Sometimes being a little bit more aggressive on the tire, if your driving style is like that, you'll make it work, but maybe your teammate won't because he's smoother. So it's really it's a fine line.
Yeah, fine margins all round. Well, let's hear from George Russell. P3 for him today as he signs off for the summer break.
Hey, George, on any other weekend this year, I imagine a podium would have been something to smile about, but can you sum up your emotions given at the start of that race you were really fighting and the win looked on?
Yeah, definitely mixed emotions, but incredibly tricky conditions out there. We had rain, drizzling throughout the whole race at different points. And when I was on the grid and it was drizzling and we were on the soft tyres, I thought, this is great. And because everyone around me was on the mediums, it was a bit tricky at the beginning, and we pulled a big gap to the cars around, and I thought it was great, but unfortunately the rain kind of slowly stopped the medium runners caught us up, We had to react and pit quite early, which was the right decision. But then it put us really on the back foot for that last stint when the rain came again on the very old medium tyres. Track was getting cooler, rain was there. It was impossible to defend against Lewis and really tricky to hold Carlos off on the brand new softs. But you know, as a team, we did everything for the right reasons. It was just a shame how things panned out.
It must give you a lot of confidence that you were fighting on pure pace today and this weekend, really. Well,
yeah, well, I think I do think Charles and Max do still have the upper hand on pure pace. And I'm sure Red Bull were just cruising out front. Obviously, Max and I were on identical strategies, so we need to see where they were quicker than us. And he probably had a 10th and a half or 2 tenths on me. And then obviously Ferrari going onto the hards, which was a bit of an odd call as in these conditions. There was no way the hard was going to work. So I do feel for Charles because he's been doing a stellar job all season. But that's racing, and as a team we capitalise from that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
A difficult day for George Russell. I'm sure when he woke up this morning he thought this could be the day when I take my first win in Formula One, but we'll have to wait a little longer to see that. And ahead of him on the road, of course, is his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Started P7, finished P2, and he had some great battles, Carlos Sainz and his teammate George.
Yeah, I think even with George, I mean, George was defending pretty hard. You know, Lewis was able to make it work. I believe it was on the outside of turn 1. But yeah, 2 teammates battling it out and both finishing on the podium. I still think for George, he should be, you know, very happy with, I mean, his pole yesterday was spectacular. His first pole position in Formula One, and to do it in that fashion, not having, you know, the favorite car and going out there and just boom, last sector. I think it was purple last sector, and then getting pole position by hundreds. He should be extremely happy. Even though he only finished 3rd today, it's still a Formula One podium, and they're on a uprise.
Yeah, and then Lewis Hamilton finishing P2, having those great battles, working his way up and just making it work out there with the strategy, finishing the race on the soft tyre. Let's hear how he is feeling after his race here in Budapest.
Hey, Lewis, with the pace that you had in the car today, it looked like you had a lot of fun out there.
I did, particularly the second half. And end of stints was really good. The first stint I struggled. I think with the medium tyre was not the right one to start the race on, particularly in those temperatures. So that was difficult, and it looked like I made those. I've overtaken a couple cars and they got stuck behind Lando, and then just couldn't get close. Then obviously Max was closing on me, then he undercut me, and I was thinking, damn, yeah, this is not great for the win, which I was hoping to try and catch up. But that second half really was able to turn it around. Balance was much better, and that last stint was epic. So.
Was it pretty cool to be thinking about a win, because you haven't really been able to do that much this year? So
well, I wasn't really thinking of the win. Once I lost that first stint, I knew it would be very hard to catch Max. I think if I started on the front row, like I think I probably would have if I had that last lap yesterday, it would have been a different day. But still, today shows that we've somehow figured out something and got a bit of pace. And if we can take us into the second stint, maybe we can start challenging for a win. That would be epic.
Great stuff. Have a good break. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lewis Hamilton, of course, referring to the DRS flap not working in qualifying yesterday. I think that really cutting his chances at a front row start. But I think he really believed that he could have been up there with George today on the front row of the grid.
Yeah, I mean, if he said it, he probably could have done it.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
He's a 7-time world champion. So, yeah, but still a mega race by them. P2, great recovery. And I think, yeah, hitting all the marks as he did in the race. Yeah, should be very happy with that.
And breaking a record, as Lewis Hamilton, or Sir Lewis Hamilton likes to do, breaking the record for most laps led at a single venue. So just, you know, to see them up at the front of the grid, it's just kind of unthinkable when we think back to a few races ago.
So Lewis has the record for most laps led in...
At a single venue.
Really?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's such a crazy
These are records
stat.
that no one even really knew we were going to have to bring out at any point in the future.
Very cool.
Yeah, another great record. So Lewis Hamilton, P2 for him. And he said, somehow we figured out what to do with the car. But I think sometimes that's a bit dangerous, isn't it? You guys like to know why you figured something out as engineers and drivers. You don't really want it to happen by chance, because then you can't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. You want to know why you're fast, so then you can replicate it at another race. And sometimes when speed comes just because it came and you don't understand why, it's a tricky situation, because then you're kind of just hoping that next weekend it'll be good again. But yeah, the important part is kind of understanding why they were fast and then improving on that and replicating it on the next race.
Let's move to our race winner. Max Verstappen started P10 on this afternoon's grid, managed to make it up to the top step of the podium, as only he really can. It was a fantastic performance by him and his team. A great strategy call from them, making it work. Masterclass, really, and a way to sort of really stamp his authority on the championship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the championship lead is, massive now, and you would think that this would be a race that Ferrari were going to be able to recover some points, having him start, in 10th, and Sergio also didn't have a great race, so he couldn't really contest with them, and they were able to turn it around and win the race and extend the championship lead.
Yeah, it is phenomenal, all the while doing a lovely 360 spin. Again, just as Max Verstappen always does. He can do that, get it back on track, and off he goes again.
That's crazy. I even forgot about that.
There was so much in this race, Pietro.
Yeah, exit of the second to last corner. He spun, continued, went out and still won the race.
Yeah, incredible.
And started in 10th.
What will stop the runaway train of Max Verstappen? Who knows? It's going to take something huge. Well, Max Verstappen on the top step of the podium for the 8th time this season this afternoon, beating the Ferraris, beating the Mercedes to the top spot and signing off in style. So let's hear from Max Verstappen, our championship leader and race winner this afternoon.
Hey, Max, I'm guessing when you woke up this morning, you probably weren't thinking victory was on the cards, or were you?
Yeah, to be honest, I was hoping to get close to a podium, but I think as a team, because of the weather as well, you have to really have that good feel. And we actually wanted to start the race on a hard, but after the reconnaissance laps, we were like, we're not doing that. We go on a soft, but it's all about just that, a feeling you need to have and confidence as well as a team to make this course, because everything was basically analyzed around the hard tire. And we changed the strategy, went on a soft, and then after that as well, we remained calm, even with some little issues with the clutch and the upshifts as well, which we had to manage the whole race. I think, we just had the right calls, right undercuts, the right tires on the car all the time.
There's been a few blips this season, but apart from that, it's been pretty dominant from you. It must be good to go into the summer break with a win like this on a circuit you weren't expecting.
Yeah, exactly. This is much better than I expected, even coming into the weekend, and then of course also after yesterday.
Great stuff. Have a good summer break.
I don't think a lot of people expected Max Verstappen to stand on the top step of the podium today. I think people probably thought podium, but the win, I think, maybe was a little far-fetched for most people.
Yeah, with the two Ferraris up there as well. And then you have George there in the mix as well, and the Mercedes being competitive this week, and you would have thought, podium, that would be a great result. A win, a bit far-fetched, and they were able to do it.
Yeah, they certainly were. Well, let's take a look then at how things stack up as we leave Hungary and head into the summer break. Let's take a look at your driver standings. Max Verstappen still leading the way. He's got 258 points to his name, and Charles Leclerc in P2, 178. The gap is widening. Sergio Perez in P3 for Red Bull Racing, and then George Russell moving ahead of Carlos Sainz now, P4 for him. Carlos Sainz P5 with 156 points. Then it's Lewis Hamilton P6 ahead of Lando Norris in the McLaren. Esteban Ocon's in P8 with 58 points, and a little further back on 46 it's Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, P9 for him. In the 10th spot on the standings, it's Fernando Alonso for Alpine with 41 points. Then Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, P11. And Daniel Ricciardo, P12, some way back from his teammate with 19 points. Pierre Gasly's P13. Then Sebastian Vettel, P14, ahead of Mick Schumacher in the second Haas, P15 for him. 11 points for Yuki Tsunoda now in P16 for the AlphaTauri. Zhou Guanyu, 5 points for him, P17 ahead of Lance Stroll with 4. And then Alex Albon with 3 points. Nicholas Latifi P20 for him with 0 points. And of course, a word for Nico Hülkenberg as well, the super sub, also on 0 points. So that's how your drivers' standings look. The gap widening at the front. And of course, Red Bull also widening their gap in the Constructors' Championship as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big task, I think, ahead of Ferrari to be able to turn it around. They have the summer break, although you can't really work in the shutdown with the Formula One rules. Everybody should stay at home and not do any work and then come back at Spa. But definitely, I think the mentality still has to be, I don't want to tell Ferrari or anything, but like take it race by race, obviously. But I think we definitely have to try to win everything from now on. So, yeah, difficult spot, but for Red Bull, yeah, extending the lead and going into the summer break with a little bit of, I think, pressure off their shoulders.
Yeah, a bit of breathing room. Well, let's take a look then at your constructors' standings as well, as Red Bull extend that lead. Top of the standings for them with 431 points. Then it's Ferrari in P2 with 334. Mercedes still hanging on in there, not out of reach just yet for them. 304 points for them in P3, and Alpine 4 points clear of the McLaren team. So Alpine hanging on to P4 this afternoon. Then McLaren P5, Alfa Romeo P6, and Haas P7 with 34 points. They're keen to hang on to that 7th spot. P8 for AlphaTauri with 27 points, Aston Martin with 20 points, and those points that Alex Albon has for Williams, 3 points for the Williams team at the back of the grid. So that's how it looks. That is where we end things for the first half of the season. Pietro, such a pleasure having you on the show. Any racing in the summer break? Any karting? Anything to keep your hand in?
No, so I'm going home back to the States tomorrow. It's been 2 months since I've been at home, so going to be good to be back at home. And then at Spa, I won't be there because I'll be racing European Le Mans in Barcelona. So.
Nice. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. We will see you back in the F1 paddock soon, I am sure. That brings us to the end of the F1 post-race show. Of course, we'll be with you in Spa-Francorchamps in a few weeks' time. It's not a very long summer holiday we get. So we'll be back for the Belgian Grand Prix. Join us then when we take you behind the scenes across the race weekend. But from me and from all the team here in Hungary, it's finally goodbye and have a wonderful summer holiday.
Lovely. This one is for Antoine.